the highest lake, the Incan treasures, the largest waterfall, and a carnival city. We're going to Peru, Iguazu Falls and Rio de Janeiro. In Lima, the capital of Peru, we're staying in the Miraflores district, a popular tourist area and easy to walk around. The John F. Kennedy Park is filled with colourful flower beds and sculptures. Just down the road is the Park of Love, overlooking the Pacific coast. It feels like it was inspired by Gaudi and has a large kissing sculpture as its central attraction. In the evening, we go on a gastronomic tour, beginning with the local speciality cocktail, a pisco sour. We sample the food at 4 restaurants, including one next to a pre-Incan temple called Huaca Pucllana. From Lima, we fly south to Puno on the shores of Lake Titicaca, famous for being the highest navigable lake in the world. We spend the first afternoon and evening appreciating our hotel's view of the lake and local wildlife such as llamas and eagles. The following morning, we experienced the lake by boat, passing by our hotel before entering the man-made channels towards the Uros reed islands. The boat checks in at a roughly fashioned border control as we arrive at these floating islands with their colourful people and banana-shaped boats. Each of the islands has a handful of houses and a president. At the island we visit, their president, Marta, shows us how the island is constructed from deep reed roots and then thatched with the remaining reed leaves. We also see the food that they eat, mainly fish, before getting a special send-off from the island women.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista. At the main administrative island, Santa Maria, there is even a hotel with basic but comfortable rooms. We continue across the lake to Tequila Island, where we disembark for a walk, seeing some farming locals and well-dressed policemen along the way. At the entrance path to the island, there are engraved stones which represent the different festivals and times of year. Reaching the top of the hill, a scenic cliff path takes us to our lunch stop, where we are shown how alpaca wool is washed and softened before an enthusiastic music and dance performance. Instead of flying from Puno to Cusco, we're taking the green bus so that we can enjoy the attractions of the Altiplano along the way. The first stop at Pucara has a traditional Spanish square with bull motifs on every column. Inside the cathedral are a distinctly blingy Virgin Mary and Child. Onwards and upwards into the snow-capped Andes, we arrive at the highest point of our journey at the Reyes Pass. The lack of oxygen at this altitude doesn't prevent tourists from getting off the bus to find a bargain souvenir or to pet a baby llama. The last stop at Rakchi is an Incan archaeological site with many old buildings and the last remaining wall of a great temple. In Cusco, the historic capital of the Incan Empire, our first port of call is the Plaza de Armas. This is the main plaza of the city and boasts both a cathedral and a large church in the same square. Driving through the rest of the city, we see local life in all its vivid colour, as well as ancient Incan streets. The old Incan walls still provide the foundation for many of the modern buildings. At Coricancha, we find well-preserved Incan temples, albeit without the gold which once adorned them. Looking through the windows, you get a sense of the precision of the architecture. Uphill and slightly out of the city is Sacsayhuaman, a citadel which was the heart of the Inca Empire. The large dry stone walls are so tightly joined with chiselled angles like a complex jigsaw puzzle. We finish off the day with a refreshing Cusco beer at a restaurant overlooking the Plaza de Armas while listening to the live music. Cusco, a 2-hour drive and a 2-hour scenic railway trip takes us to Aguas Calientes, the base camp for Machu Picchu. From here, we need to take a bus to the top of the mountain, and there's already a long queue forming. They do need to put on more buses here. After the half-hour bus journey, we walk a small uphill trail, and we are not disappointed when we reach this stunning vista over Machu Picchu. We've seen it on postcards 1,000 times, but it still really impresses in the flesh. It's hard to believe this place was only rediscovered a century ago. Now, even though there are so many people here, they easily spread out over the terraces and buildings, giving plenty of space for us to explore and enjoy. Back at the train station, we're catching the Peru Rail Vista Dome train for the return journey. As the name suggests, the carriages afford wide views of the surrounding mountains, and you even get fed along the way. The train staff even put on a little fashion show to entertain us. Our last day in Peru is spent in the picturesque Sacred Valley. Even though there are several activities on offer, we decide to do nothing but eat, drink and relax. Who wouldn't with views like these? On the borders of Brazil and Argentina is the largest system of waterfalls in the world, Iguazu Falls. For our first day, we're walking the trail on the Brazilian side. It's not long before we encounter a ring-tailed coati, a South American member of the raccoon family. Looking down, we see a walkway that extends to the edge of the falls. It's already a cold, miserable day, but it gets a whole lot wetter and windier when we take this path. It's worth it, though, to be close up to these powerful forces of nature. In the distance, we see an Argentinian viewpoint, which we'll be visiting tomorrow. The next day, we're on the Argentinian side, and the weather has completely changed. It's lovely and warm and sunny. We take a train to the end of the line, where a boardwalk leads us to the Devil's Throat, an impressive U-shaped section of the falls. Returning along the boardwalk, we catch the train back to the central station. Along the way, we see animal movement in the forest, which turns out to be a troop of playful capuchin monkeys. From the central station, there are two walking trails. The upper trail crosses the top of the Cascades and gives the best wide views of the area. Down the steps to the lower trail, we get closer to the gorges and pools that the water plunges into. If you're feeling brave, we weren't, you can take a boat trip into the heart of the waterfalls. For our last day in South America, we're in Rio de Janeiro, taking a jeep tour around this vibrant city. Our first destination is Corcovado Hill, which means hunchback in Portuguese. As well as great views of the city, this is also home to the very famous Christ the Redeemer sculpture. Continuing on our tour, we arrive at Sugarloaf Mountain, where a cable car takes us to the top. As we appreciate the aerial views, we realise we're still only halfway up, so we board another cable car to continue upwards. From here, the views are even more far-reaching, including the famous Copacabana beach. As we're heading back to the cable car, we notice this cute animal in the trees, a small monkey known as a marmoset. final stage of our tour takes us down Atlantic Avenue, past the sunbathers on Copacabana Beach, before we arrive back to our hotel in Ipanema. Here we can just relax and admire the view from the rooftop pool.